Hey there, welcome to That Dang Dad. My name is Phil, and tonight we get a little spooky just in time for that most famous October holiday. So, I'm a horror movie liker, and in October I like to try to watch as many horror movies as possible. And one of the ones that I've revisited this month is 1996's Scream, directed by Wes Craven. I had seen it around the time that it came out. And for those of you who weren't alive back then, which seems like a lot more people than it used to be, meta horror hadn't really been done to death at that point, and so having a genre movie where the characters were aware of genre rules felt really fresh and funny. I remember really liking it when I was a teen lad. So I thought it'd be interesting to revisit it here in 2019 and see if it held up. The verdict? Mostly yes. I think it's got a tight pace. I think it's pretty funny. And, it's a thriller first and a meta commentary second. So I think it's still fun and thrilling even when the meta commentary feels a little dated in 2019. It's also extremely much more violent than I remembered. The violence is really intense and kind of unsettling. I was actually really shocked. I hadn't remembered that it was that out of control. So anyway, on to the topic at hand. As somebody who loves horror movies from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, one thing that's always a little thorny when you revisit movies from that era is the way that they treat gender stuff, and queer stuff, and racial stuff, and disabled stuff. Many older films portray sexual assault or iffy sexual consent for laughs, or just sort of a part of life that we all just have to deal with and accept. And knowing that Scream is very much about a teen virgin and her boyfriend, I was really curious about how the sexual politics would come across in 2019. The verdict on that? It's complicated. So let's dig in a little bit. The first scene where this really stuck out to me was when Billy sneaks into Sydney's room at night. He starts complaining that their relationship has gone from rated R to edited for TV. And he references Sydney's underwear rule. From this, we can infer that they are A, not having sex, and B, she has a rule where he's sort of not allowed to go under her underwear or whatever. So in the film, there's a good reason for this. Sydney's mother was raped and murdered less than a year ago. Anywho, they start making out. His hands wander up to the boundary line. She cuts things short. And with just a little mild protest, he leaves. He even makes sure to kind of reassure her and promise her that he's not trying to pressure her for sex. And she even kind of playfully flashes her breasts at him. I thought this was a fairly mature depiction of teenage consent dynamics. I mean, Billy obviously wants to take the bullet train to Pound Town, but Sydney has clear boundaries. Even better, when she asks him to stop, he just stops. He pouts a teeny bit, but he doesn't try to guilt her during or after. And I have some problems where he says, you see what you do to me? But all in all, it's pretty mild. I think this was a healthy consent negotiation between two people who have more or less equal power dynamics. And for a 90s horror film, this is practically second wave feminism. But things get a little gummed up in the middle of the film. Sydney gets attacked by a masked figure and she thinks it's Billy. He gets arrested, but a bunch of evidence comes out that seems to indicate that he was not the attacker. And later on, he confronts her at school. And, if you were falsely accused of attacking somebody, you'd have every right to be upset. But listen to how Billy twists it right from the jump. He says, I have a girlfriend who'd rather accuse me of being a psychopathic killer than touch me. He goes on to criticize her for not being over her mother's rape and murder within a year. And to me, this is like borderline gaslighting. I mean, Sid has every right to still be upset about her mother's death. It was brutal, and it's the 1-year anniversary during the film. And I do want to say this for Billy. If he has sexual needs that aren't being met in the relationship, that's a valid issue. Outside of criminal creeper stuff, people deserve to find sexual fulfillment in their relationships. And I think it's okay to acknowledge if that's not happening. However, Billy is completely wrong to doubt Sydney's trauma, to imply that she's milking it or that she's taking too long to sort of navigate the trauma. If Billy has needs and Sydney is not meeting those needs, Billy should break up with her. He's not entitled to sex from Sydney or anybody else. And it's wrong to wheedle and cajole and try to guilt people into having sex with you. So just let's all of us here on this channel make a pact not to do that. Sound good? Great. So in light of these two scenes, I found the final scene of sexual dynamics in Scream to be extremely interesting. So later in the film, Sid and Billy go upstairs at a party to kind of talk things over, and they're discussing her hesitation towards sex, the psychological reasons behind it, when suddenly it happens. Sydney gets horned up.
Let's go.
She initiates a hot kiss and then tells Billy she wants to change their genre from made-for-TV into pornography. And check this out. Billy basically asks for confirmation of this twice before anything happens. In light of her previous hesitation, he doesn't just come crash into her the minute she sounds ready. He pauses for like 2 beats to make sure that it's okay. After this, they make out passionately, and then Sydney is the one who removes her underwear first, thereby symbolically lifting the underwear rule. So your mileage may vary on this, but I read that scene as pretty enthusiastic consent from Sid. She initiates the sexy stuff, she proposes sex, and she sets the pace of the encounter. If this had happened in the same scene as when Billy was kind of guilting her and gaslighting her, I would have felt differently about it. But in the context of the film, this takes place many, many hours later when both parties have had time to be by themselves and think things through. Also, and I think this is really important, it shows that people can have a hot sexual encounter and still be conscious of consent. You know, making sure Sid was ready didn't ruin the mood, didn't kill the romance. It was still spontaneous and sexy. So the next time that you hear somebody complain that, oh, you can't even flirt anymore, you know, feel free to banish them to the shadow realm. It's nonsense. So what's my point with all this? I can hear some people saying, hey, it's just a horror movie. Why are you putting it under the microscope like this, especially when the film is not about sexual politics? And for me, the answer is that I think sexual consent is so important that any media portrayal of consent dynamics is worth examining. I mean, rightly or wrongly, media is how a lot of people, especially young people, form ideas about what's normal. So I think it's worth our time to interrogate what Scream has to say about consent dynamics and what the film portrays as normal, especially because it's a horror movie and it's not about sex. Since sex isn't the topic of the film, that means that any sex that we do see is going to be considered normal and unremarkable. So I think it's important to interrogate how that goes down and what we think about that. So I think this is the price of admission for continuing to love older things that might be problematic nowadays. I don't think we need to stop watching our old favorites. We just need to be able to clearly articulate why something is or isn't okay. We need to be able to see blind spots in the past with our kind of more enlightened, healthy eyes today. And I think we need to praise when media gets it right instead of only complaining when they get it wrong. You know, it's important to call out toxic tropes that are harmful, but I think we should also make sure to give kudos when a piece of media reinforces a good message. And so for me, I thought Scream did pretty good with sexual consent for 1996. Great job, Wes Craven and the rest of the crew. Just a shame that it turns out Billy was one of the 2 homicidal killers in the movie. Anyway, what do you think? Is this a masterclass in consent, or did I misread something? Make sure you sound off in the comments. Like and subscribe if you are down with my sickness. And anyway, thanks for joining me tonight, and I'll catch you next time. Good night.